Take you back to what really was our viewer question yesterday. It's followed on to us now speaking to experts about this. Eskom wants you and I to pay for power even before you use it, and more worryingly, even if you don't use the power. You could be forking out almost R1,000 just to be connected to the grid. That's not even turning a light on yet. It's all part of the utilities restructured tariff plan that is now heading over to NERSA. Let's bring in, it's always good to have Photovoltaic Industry Association's Botha joining us, regular guest on the show. Villiers, morning, good to have you back with us. When I say almost R1,000, the exact number I have here is R938, even if you use zero zip zilch kilowatts per hour. You can imagine how upset our viewers were with our viewer question yesterday. This can't be fair, surely. What do you think?
Good morning, Gareth, and thank you for having us. Yes, I think that was also the bad news that was shared last week, and it was in the last 2 weeks, it appeared in the media, the R938 model. And I think we already spoke about that, you know, there is some justification in having Eskom recover fair costs. But I think we just need to look at the latest submission from Eskom is much wider than the previous submission of only the 938. It's the 938 was something that public extracted perhaps from that tariff and looked at that blindly. Now, I think what we need to look at is that the last time Eskom's tariffs were, let's call it the basket of tariffs were put together, were done in 2012. Now, the energy landscape internationally has changed drastically since 2012. We've seen a lot of alternatives, renewable energies coming on board, and you know, we need to keep with those times. If you and I kept in our businesses to what we did in 2012, we would have been 10 years behind. And that's almost where we are with Eskom. Now, tariffs is actually the golden thread to any grid operator, to put it that. And what we know is imminent is the Eskom unbundling. And in future, where we traditionally had, sorry, let me go back to that, we traditionally had Eskom as a vertical supplier of electricity and us as public being the consumers. In future, we're going to see an integrated grid where we are all going to be generators and consumers, as we call them these days, prosumers of electricity. And it is really paving the way through these tariffs to make to put the path there for these integrated grid to be done. Just another point also is the cost reflectiveness of this. Currently, to keep the lights on literally in an evening peak, Eskom runs open cycle gas turbines at around R8 per kilowatt hour. And during that time, they sell it to you and me and businesses at around R2. So they sit at only recovering 1/4 of the actual cost. That's not a business. So what you do is the tariff is this opportunity whereby you could influence behavior of the public. And that's including us as private individuals as well as businesses. One aspect that Eskom also mentioned was that they had the impression in the past that indigent households were low users of energy. But now that they've done the study, they realize that indigent households often have a large number of residents with actually a larger consumption. And then the block tariff, where you would have paid an increased amount the more you used per month, actually worked against the indigents. And it is getting that fair balance between, call it a mixture of consumption and generation to the grid.
Because so part of what Eskom says here as well, to Villiers as well, because they do give an explanation as well. It's a very long, typical Eskom explanation. You've got to sort of just dig down to take the parts out that you need. And I quote, firstly, the different tariff rates no longer reflect the different services being provided. That's exactly what you're saying. They were giving an average across-the-board tariff, but then some were losing, some were gaining. And I think they're trying to just be more specific about that. I think and help us understand, to your mind, does the R938, is it justifiable? I think that's what most of the Africans want to know. Yes, we understand revenue, we understand infrastructure costs, but can you justify that amount to charge us?
Let us look at the number that they applied that to, because that does not necessarily apply to all residential customers. It'll apply to a certain class of residential customers, and that class of residential customers that the R938 refers to is a class where Eskom did the cost reflective tariff calculation to be at around R2,800 per month spent. So you'll agree with me that's not the indigent class that's going to fork out the 938. They said that after the study, they realized that those people will actually now end with a bill of around 2,500. Let me explain how that comes about. So you will have a 938 Rand fixed charge. That's your network charge. That's bringing the wires from the grid to your roam. Okay, that's the service fee, network charge. Then you will have additionally your energy charge. That's the flow of electricity into your house. And that's going to reduce actually compared to where the network charge is going to increase, which will mean that if you generate your own power at home, you're going to pay for that service of having the network available when you need Eskom as a backup. Because very often the sun doesn't shine, we have cloudy weather, winter days are shorter. People still need the grid when they install these solar systems. And it is justifying that. So for the class where the 938 would apply, those people will also almost be at the same, call it, they won't be worse off as they are at present.
Okay, now it all makes sense to me as well. One day, De Villiers, you're going to come to studio and join me here with a big whiteboard and do the maths with me, draw little pictures so Gareth can understand. But you've made sense for me. I appreciate it. De Villiers, Botha, joining us here on the South African Morning. Okay, so it actually does make sense the way he has explained it. I think it's just the shock when you hear Eskom increasing tariffs and we throw a number out like 938 Rand. But when you listen to someone like De Villiers, it begins to make sense why it's being done, the way it's being done. Might not be happy, of course, but at least it's making sense the way he explained it. Appreciate his time this morning on the show.